At its peak in the 19th and early 20th centuries, the British Empire was the largest empire the world had ever seen, covering around 25% of the Earth's land surface and ruling over 412 million people. This vast empire stretched across continents, including Africa, Asia, the Americas, and Oceania. Famous for the saying "the sun never sets on the British Empire," this global reach meant that Britain had colonies and territories in every corner of the world. The sheer size and diversity of the empire made it a dominant force in world politics, trade, and culture. The British Empire's rise began in the 16th century with exploration and trade. British explorers like Sir Francis Drake and John Cabot were pioneers, discovering new lands and opening trade routes. The foundation of the British East India Company in 1600 was a major turning point, as it allowed Britain to establish trading posts and colonies in India, which later became the jewel in the crown of the empire. The early focus on commerce, particularly in valuable goods like spices, tea, and textiles, helped fund Britain's expansion and established it as a global trading power. In the 17th century, Britain began colonizing North America, starting with the settlement of Jamestown in Virginia in 1607. Over time, Britain established 13 colonies along the east coast of what is now the United States. These colonies were a key part of Britain's growing empire, providing raw materials like tobacco and cotton while also creating new markets for British goods. However, tensions grew over time between the colonies and the British government, leading to the American Revolution in 1776 and the loss of the 13 colonies. This marked the first major setback for the British Empire. The 19th century, often called the Age of Imperialism, was when the British Empire expanded at a rapid pace. Britain seized large parts of Africa, Asia, and the Pacific, driven by competition with other European powers, economic interests, and the belief in spreading Western civilization, often called the white man's burden. Britain established colonies or protectorates in countries like India, Egypt, South Africa, Australia, and Canada. These regions provided vital resources like cotton, tea, rubber, and gold, which fueled Britain's industrial growth and wealth. This period marked the height of Britain's global dominance. The Industrial Revolution, which began in Britain in the late 18th century, greatly strengthened the British Empire. Britain became the world's leading industrial power, with factories producing goods on a massive scale. This industrial growth required resources like coal, iron, and cotton, much of which came from the empire's colonies. In turn, the colonies became crucial markets for British manufactured goods. The advancements in technology, transportation, and communication also allowed Britain to control its empire more effectively, through innovations like the steamship, telegraph, and railways. India was the most valuable and important colony in the British Empire, often referred to as the jewel in the crown. British control of India began with the British East India Company, which gradually took over large parts of the country by exploiting local rivalries. In 1858, after the Indian Rebellion, also called the Sepoy Mutiny, the British government took direct control of India, making it a key part of the empire. India provided Britain with valuable resources like cotton, tea, and spices, while also being a huge market for British goods. The British also built railways and other infrastructure, but their rule was often harsh, and Indian independence movements grew stronger over time. One of the key factors in the rise of the British Empire was its powerful navy. By the 18th and 19th centuries, the British Navy was the most dominant maritime force in the world. It allowed Britain to protect its trade routes, colonies, and interests across the globe. Naval victories, such as the defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588 and the victory at the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805, secured Britain's position as the world's leading naval power. This dominance helped Britain expand and maintain its empire by ensuring control of the seas. World War I had a devastating impact on the British Empire. While Britain and its allies won the war, the cost in terms of lives and resources was immense. Britain's economy was heavily weakened by the war, and many colonies began to question British rule. Soldiers from across the empire, including India, Australia, and Africa, had fought for Britain, and after the war, they sought greater autonomy or independence. Although the British Empire expanded after the war, gaining territories from the defeated Ottoman and German empires, the war planted the seeds of its eventual decline. As the 20th century progressed, independence movements grew stronger throughout the British Empire. In India, leaders like Mahatma Gandhi advocated for non-violent resistance against British rule. After years of protests, strikes, and negotiations, India finally gained independence in 1947, followed by Pakistan. This was a major blow to the British Empire, as India had been its most valuable colony. In the following decades, many other colonies, particularly in Africa and the Caribbean, also gained independence, as the desire for self-rule became a global movement. World War II marked the beginning of the end for the British Empire. The war drained Britain's resources even further, leaving it economically weakened and heavily in debt. After the war, Britain could no longer afford to maintain its empire, and the pressure for independence from its colonies grew stronger. The United States and the Soviet Union, which emerged as the two new superpowers, also pushed for decolonization. By the 1950s and 1960s, many of Britain's colonies in Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean had gained independence, signaling the end of the empire.